In this lesson, we'll be learning about phylum Echinodermata. So let's first look at some examples of animals in phylum Echinodermata. Probably the most famous is a starfish, more aptly named a sea star because they're not fish at all. A brittle star, very much like a sea star, just with skinnier and more fragile arms. Sea urchins, sea cucumbers, and sea lilies. They're also called feather stars. So those are all animals within phylum Echinodermata, and they all have things in common. First of all, they all have spiny skin. Echino means spiny and derm means skin. And this purple and orange down here is a close-up of an echinoderm's skin. These white features right here are 2 feet, and we'll talk about them later. But the purple and orange, you can kind of see how spiny it is, how hard and calloused it is. And this is the definition of an echinoderm. Echinoderms are characterized by spiny skin, an internal skeleton, a water vascular system, and suction cup-like structures called tube feet. So all echinoderms have those characteristics. Here's a picture of their internal skeleton, and this is what you would see if you washed away all of their soft tissue. Most adult echinoderms exhibit 5-part radial symmetry. So in echinoderms, there's 5 places where you could cut it and have an identical side. Most of the animals we've talked about so far, except for cnidarians and poriferans, sponges and sea jellies, those kind of ones, have bilateral symmetry, but we're back to radial symmetry with echinoderms. So they have 5-part radial symmetry. Now, all echinoderms are characterized by the water vascular system. It's a system of internal tubes, and it's filled with fluid, some of which is seawater that they pull from their surroundings, and it carries out many of their essential body functions, including respiration, circulation, and movement. So it's a very important system in echinoderms, and all echinoderms have it. Let's talk about a little bit of the anatomy. First is the madreporite. That's this little circle right here. It's on top in the sea star, and it lets water into the water vascular system. It's also sometimes called a sieve plate because it does sift out and keep out like sand and other particles from entering the water vascular system. If you see a sea star, you may think it's an eye. It is on top and it's very prominent, but it's part of the water vascular system. The madreporite connects to a ring canal that forms a circle around the animal's mouth. So the madreporite lets the water in, and then the water comes in the ring canal, and that helps distribute the water evenly. And then from the ring canal, 5 radial canals extend along the body segments. And then from the radial canals, the water goes into the tube feet. Attached to the radial canals are tube feet. They operate much like a suction cup. So water enters this little bulb, and when the bulb contracts, when it squeezes, the water is forced out of this hollow foot, and the foot extends. And then it suctions onto the substrate, so whatever that is, usually sand or a rock perhaps, and then water is let back into the bulb through the water vascular system, and the foot contracts or releases. So now we're going to talk about the 7 survival characteristics of echinoderms. First, all echinoderms have a simple digestive system, pretty much just a mouth, a stomach, intestine, and anus. And in many classes, the mouth is on the underside and the anus is on the top side. And we'll see that in a picture in just a second. Sea stars push their stomachs out of their bodies and insert it into their prey, allowing them to digest their food externally. And this helps them, they're often able to digest prey larger than themselves because they can push their stomach out. So here's a picture. So this is a sea star. The mouth is on the underside. That's because they're crawling along the substrate and their food is located on the underside. They have a stomach, and then they have intestines. And intestines, they have 5, 1 down each arm. and then an anus. For respiration and circulation, they use the water vascular system, and the thin walls of the tube feet provide the main surface for respiration. So their 2 feet is where that oxygen enters their water vascular system and where waste, the carbon dioxide, exits. So they breathe and move materials around their bodies using the water vascular system. For excretion, solid waste is released through the anus, and then cellular waste or nitrogenous waste is released through the water vascular system. Again, through those 2 feet, because they're so thin, the waste flows, diffuses out of the 2 feet. They have no head in phylum Echinodermata. So as they have no head, there is not a very highly developed nervous system. They do have a nerve ring that surrounds their mouths and radial nerves that connect the ring with the body sections. So here's a picture of that, just a very simple diagram. Nerve ring, their mouth would be located on the underside right there, and then a radial nerve down each arm. Some echinoderms do have scattered sensory cells that detect light, gravity, and chemicals released by potential prey. Often these are located on the ends of the arms in sea stars. For movement, they use the water vascular system. They use their 2 feet. So there's some 2 feet. Water has been forced out of them, and they are suctioned onto this rock. And then more water will be let in, and they'll release and be able to move again. Some echinoderms have movable spines, like sea urchins. Some sea urchins have movable spines that help them move as well. And then for reproduction, all echinoderms have external fertilization, and the sexes are separate. So males release sperm into the water, females release eggs into the water, and they meet. The larvae, so after an egg and a sperm meet, they develop into a larvae, which is a little echinoderm. They swim around for some time and then swim to the ocean bottom where they developed into adults. And it's interesting to note that larvae have bilateral symmetry, but the adults have radial symmetry. So it's suggested that echinoderms came from a bilateral ancestor. So here's some larvae. You can see that they are bilateral. They only have one plane where you can cut them where they would be similar or the same. And then they'll land on the ocean floor and develop into an adult that has 5-part radial symmetry. So that is our introduction to phylum Echinodermata.